The morning sun rose over the Norfolk Naval Base, casting long shadows across the concrete expanse of docks, warehouses, and barracks. The base was already alive with movement. The clatter of boots on metal catwalks, the sharp whistle of drill instructors, and the faint hum of aircraft preparing for the day's sorties. Among the throng of young recruits arriving that day, a single figure stood out, not because of stature, but because of quiet composure. Ava Collins stepped down from the bus with measured steps, her uniform neat, her expression calm, and her eyes observing every detail. The other recruits had already formed cliques along the platform, exchanging jokes, sizing each other up. Most were young men fresh out of high school, eager to impress and loud with bravado. Among them, Jake Reynolds, broad-shouldered and cocky, elbowed his friends as he spotted Ava stepping into the sunlight. "Look at her," he whispered, smirking. "The new recruit. Bet she can't even lift that pack without falling on her face." His laughter was loud, designed to draw attention. The other recruits snickered, their eyes flicking toward Ava as though waiting for her first mistake. Ava ignored them. She carried herself like someone used to scrutiny, eyes sharp, movements deliberate. Every detail of the base caught her attention. The pattern of the morning drills, the cadence of orders, the subtle hierarchy among the recruits. To the others, she seemed timid, almost fragile, her quietness mistaken for weakness. They had no idea that behind those calm eyes lay years of elite training, precision and experience that could command a room or a battlefield. The bus hissed and rattled as it pulled away, leaving Ava alone on the platform with her pack. She adjusted the strap over her shoulder and stepped toward the long lines of recruits being organized by Petty Officer Chief Ramirez, a seasoned instructor whose sharp gaze missed nothing. Ramirez looked her over and raised a single eyebrow, sensing something different about this new recruit. He didn't interfere, waiting to see how events would unfold. The air was thick with anticipation, the chatter of young recruits, a mix of nerves and bravado. Jake leaned against a railing, smirking at Ava. "Hey, newbie," he called, loud enough for a few friends to hear. "Hope you're ready to get schooled." A few recruits snickered. Others rolled their eyes, already bored with the performance. Ava simply nodded politely, her expression neutral. She didn't respond to the taunts. To the others, it was as if she didn't hear them or didn't care. As the group lined up for the morning drill, Ava noticed the smallest things, the way the recruits carried their packs, the subtle hesitation in their movements, the difference between those confident in their skills and those pretending. Every glance, every twitch of muscle told her a story, and she catalogued it silently. She moved into position at the back of the line, not to be noticed, but to observe. She knew that underestimation could be a powerful advantage, especially in this environment, where pride often outweighed experience. "All right, recruits," Chief Ramirez barked, his voice cutting through the morning clamor. "We're going to start with basic formations. Move out." The recruits scrambled to follow, some fumbling with their gear, others trying to look competent. Ava moved with quiet precision, her posture perfect, her pace steady. The difference between her and the others was palpable. She didn't rush, didn't stumble, didn't need to announce her presence. She simply executed. Jake couldn't resist another jab. "Careful back there, newbie," he called, loud enough for half the line to hear. "Wouldn't want you to trip over your own feet." His friends laughed, but Ava didn't react outwardly. Instead, she gave a slight adjustment to her pack, a small, controlled movement that revealed nothing of the strength it required. Inside, she noted his arrogance, a textbook overconfidence she had seen countless times in training environments like this. The first drill involved a timed march around the compound, carrying packs loaded with standard issue gear. The younger recruits struggled almost immediately, some panting heavily, others complaining under their breath. Ava, however, moved steadily, her breathing even, every step calculated to conserve energy. When a recruit near her stumbled and nearly dropped his pack, she instinctively reached out, steadying him, but with a subtle touch that drew no attention. To the others, it appeared she was simply being polite. To Ava, it was a lesson in observation and quick correction. By mid-morning, the tension between Ava and the other recruits had grown. Jake had begun whispering, "I don't know why she's even here. Bet she folds the moment we get to tactical drills." His friends nodded, convinced that her quiet demeanor was weakness. Meanwhile, Ava kept moving, her eyes scanning, noting every muscle tension, every sign of fatigue, every crack in the armor of their confidence. She was learning them as much as they thought they were observing her. During a brief pause, Chief Ramirez approached the line, scanning the recruits with a critical eye. When he reached Ava, he allowed a faint smirk to touch his lips. He recognized the stance, the control, the unspoken discipline that came from years of elite training. He didn't say anything, just made a mental note. This recruit was different. He stepped back, letting the others continue under their own misconceptions. The morning drills ended with a series of agility tests. Most of the recruits struggled, and whispers of doubt and exhaustion filled the air. Ava performed each task with a quiet grace, never hurried, never careless. Her movements were precise, almost effortless, and though she was unnoticed in the chaos, her presence was undeniable. The other recruits didn't yet realize that they were witnessing a standard of excellence far beyond their own. As the group gathered for a short break, Jake couldn't hold back his arrogance any longer. "Hey, newbie," he called again, loud enough to get a few laughs. "Don't get lost. Don't want to slow us down." Ava looked at him calmly, her eyes steady, unflinching. She didn't respond, but inside, a quiet plan began to form. This first day would set the tone, and by the end, she would teach lessons far more effective than words or boasts. By the time the sun reached its zenith, the recruits were tired, their confidence inflated by camaraderie and youthful bravado, unaware that they had just stepped onto the same field as someone who had already mastered every challenge they could imagine. Ava, calm and controlled, moved with purpose toward the next phase of the day. Every step, every glance, every breath carried the quiet power of someone who had been underestimated countless times and was ready to prove, when the moment came, that she was in a class of her own. The stage was set. In just a few short hours, the mockery would stop, the laughs would die, and the recruits would realize that the quiet, unassuming new recruit wasn't just competent, she was Navy elite. The morning drills had ended, but the tension in the air had only thickened. The recruits, flushed with exertion, gathered near the training grounds for the next set of exercises. The sun climbed higher, turning the base into a hot, metallic expanse, reflecting the relentless discipline that would define every day here. Among them, Ava Collins remained a silent observer, her movements precise, her posture impeccable, her eyes scanning the group. To the others, she seemed calm, almost fragile, but every so often, a slight tightening of her jaw or a subtle flex of her arm hinted at hidden strength. Jake Reynolds, emboldened by the apparent inexperience of their newest recruit, sauntered forward. "Hey, newbie," he called, a teasing grin plastered across his face. "Don't trip over your own feet when we start the next drill. We wouldn't want you slowing us down." His friend snickered, tossing her sly glances as if daring her to react. Ava's eyes met his briefly, calm and steady, betraying no emotion. She didn't respond, but the silence in her gaze unsettled him slightly. The other recruits leaned into the mockery, their arrogance feeding off one another. Whispers traveled down the line. "She's going to fail fast," said one. "Bet she's never seen a push-up before," said another. They laughed among themselves, confident in their superiority, oblivious to the fact that Ava was not only observing, but mentally cataloging their movements, patterns and weaknesses. Every sneer, every misstep, every nervous twitch would be remembered. Chief Ramirez, watching from a distance, allowed the scene to unfold. His sharp eyes followed every smirk and whispered comment, noting the hierarchy of arrogance forming among the recruits. Most of them believed that confidence could substitute for skill, but Ramirez knew that humility and preparation would always win in the long run. Ava, silent and collected, carried herself with a precision that spoke volumes. Ramirez understood immediately. She was no ordinary recruit. The day's drills began with a test of coordination, an obstacle course that required balance, timing, and teamwork. Ava moved with quiet efficiency, observing the course before she advanced. Jake and his friends, in contrast, rushed through, performing exaggerated leaps and showing off for one another. Inevitably, their pride betrayed them. Jake misjudged a jump, tripping on a rope and almost falling into a muddy pit. Ava instinctively moved to catch him, placing a steadying hand on his arm, but in such a casual, unobtrusive way that it appeared as though she were merely polite. The recruits noticed her action, but misinterpreted it. "She's just lucky," muttered one of Jake's friends, shaking his head. "Probably fell a few times herself. We just didn't see it." They laughed, oblivious to the control and skill behind her composure. Ava, however, didn't laugh. Her focus remained unbroken, her every movement deliberate, her calm demeanor masking years of elite training and battlefield experience. To her, this mockery was simply a performance, a predictable display of arrogance that would collapse under pressure soon enough. After the obstacle course, the group moved on to tactical drills, navigating a short maze while carrying weighted packs and following strict commands. The recruits stumbled immediately. Sweat poured down their faces, breaths came in ragged gasps, and frustration built quickly. Ava, moving with fluid precision, barely exerted herself. She anticipated the twists and turns of the maze, adjusting her pace and posture effortlessly. Every action she took was calculated, every movement efficient. Jake, still determined to assert dominance, attempted to push past her, a smirk plastered on his face. "Step aside, newbie. This is how it's done." Ava barely reacted. Instead, she sidestepped him with a subtle, controlled motion, allowing him to stumble slightly as he miscalculated her movement. A collective snicker arose from the group. They interpreted her inaction as uncertainty or hesitation. Little did they know, this was her testing them, gauging their coordination, timing, and ego. "Come on, move faster," one recruit yelled, frustrated at falling behind. Ava responded silently, maintaining her calm pace, adjusting her stride to conserve energy while still navigating the maze flawlessly. To the others, she seemed almost passive, letting them race ahead while she appeared to lag. Chief Ramirez observed quietly, knowing that patience and observation were Ava's tools. The recruits' arrogance was building a critical mistake that would soon become their lesson. Lunch break arrived, and the recruits collapsed under the shade of a nearby building, chattering nervously and boasting about their performance. Jake, sweating and exhausted, muttered under his breath, "She's lucky." Nothing more. His friends nodded, agreeing. They saw Ava sipping water calmly, barely breaking a sweat. Her composure only fueled their arrogance. They assumed her quietness meant weakness or lack of experience. Ava, meanwhile, analyzed each of them silently. Their glares, their postures, their subtle hesitations all told her who would falter under pressure and who might hold their own. She had seen these traits countless times in training environments. Overconfidence followed by sudden collapse, bravado followed by panic, arrogance followed by defeat. She cataloged them mentally, preparing for the moment when skill would speak louder than mockery. The afternoon brought hand-to-hand combat drills designed to test reflexes and coordination. Ava's turn came, and Jake immediately volunteered, grinning, eager to prove superiority. The other recruits gathered around, snickering and whispering bets on who would win. "This'll be quick," one said, already laughing in anticipation. Ava stepped onto the mat, her posture relaxed but alert, every muscle poised like a coiled spring. The fight began. Jake lunged forward recklessly, expecting an easy victory. Ava moved with fluid, controlled precision. She sidestepped, guided him with subtle force, and redirected his momentum without effort. His feet tangled, and before anyone could react, Ava executed a flawless disarm maneuver. Jake stumbled, shocked, and nearly fell to the ground. The group gasped in surprise, their laughter dying instantly. Chief Ramirez's smirk widened slightly. He knew the moment had arrived. Ava didn't gloat. She helped Jake regain his footing with the same quiet grace she had shown all day. Her calm, unassuming manner made the lesson even more powerful. The recruit's arrogance had been shattered in an instant, replaced by disbelief and curiosity. That single maneuver, executed with speed, skill, and precision, revealed what they had failed to see all morning. Ava Collins was no ordinary recruit. She was Navy elite. The mockery that had dominated the day vanished. Whispers spread through the group. "She's amazing," one muttered. Another stammered, "I didn't know. I mean, how?" Even Jake, now flushed with embarrassment and awe, struggled to form words. The once confident ringleader of ridicule now stood humbled before someone he had underestimated completely. Chief Ramirez finally addressed the group, his voice carrying authority and satisfaction. "Meet Petty Officer Ava Collins," he announced, "former Navy elite instructor. And this, recruits, is how experience speaks." For the first time all day, the recruits were silent. The lesson was not in words, but in action, humility, and undeniable skill. Ava's quiet composure had concealed a storm of precision and expertise, waiting for the right moment to make itself known. The day's mockery had turned into awe, and a profound respect had taken its place. As the recruits regrouped and moved on to the next set of drills, the dynamic had shifted completely. Ava no longer walked among them as the new recruit. She moved with authority and control, a figure of quiet power. The others, once brash and careless, now glanced at her with caution, admiration, and a growing understanding. This was someone who had been underestimated at their peril. The afternoon sun continued its climb over Norfolk Naval Base, casting long shadows across the training grounds. And as the recruits prepared for the rest of the day's challenges, one truth was clear. The mockery had ended, and a lesson in humility, skill, and respect had begun. The afternoon heat pressed down on Norfolk Naval Base, turning the training grounds into a furnace of sweat, tension, and anticipation. The recruits had just finished the obstacle course and tactical drills, their bodies exhausted, their egos bruised from the morning's minor humiliations. But Jake Reynolds, still stubborn and brimming with misplaced confidence, refused to believe that the quiet, composed woman among them, Ava Collins, was anything more than a lucky trainee. Chief Ramirez's sharp whistle pierced the air, halting the group mid-motion. "Line up. Tactical demonstration. Volunteers for a partner drill now." The recruits scrambled to form a line, their boots pounding on the sun-scorched ground. Jake's chest puffed with pride as he saw the opportunity. He stepped forward immediately, his grin cocky and confident. "I'll go first," he boasted. His friends cheered him on, whispering wagers on how quickly he would school the new recruit. Ava moved with quiet deliberation, stepping onto the mat with the calm poise of someone who had done this thousands of times before. There was no hesitation, no overt display of strength, only the subtle, controlled power in her posture, the way her eyes scanned her opponent, and the minute shifts in balance that hinted at someone trained at the highest levels. Jake, by contrast, bounced on his heels, eager to show dominance, his confidence blinding him to the danger before him. "Begin," Chief Ramirez commanded. Jake lunged forward recklessly, overextending in his eagerness to overpower her. Ava's response was fluid, almost imperceptible. With a slight sidestep and a subtle adjustment of weight, she redirected his momentum. His arms flailed, and for a brief second, the group laughed nervously, thinking it was a lucky dodge. But in the next heartbeat, Ava executed a flawless maneuver, using Jake's force against him. With a precision flip, she disarmed him, pinning him effortlessly to the mat. The room went completely silent. The other recruits stared, mouths agape, unable to process what they had just witnessed. The laughter that had filled the morning evaporated instantly. Jake struggled to comprehend the speed, power, and skill that had overtaken him in mere seconds. His friends' wide-eyed stares reflected the collective shock of the group. None had seen a movement so controlled, so fluid, and so undeniably effective. Chief Ramirez stepped forward, a slight smirk tugging at the corners of his mouth. "Petty Officer Ava Collins," he announced, his voice carrying over the stunned group. "Former Navy elite instructor. Let that be a lesson skills speak louder than words, and arrogance is always the first to fall." Ava helped Jake to his feet, her touch gentle and controlled, her face calm. "No hard feelings," she said softly, almost apologetically, as though the maneuver had been nothing extraordinary. Jake's cheeks burned with embarrassment, a stark contrast to the confidence he had displayed just moments before. He struggled to find words, finally muttering, I didn't know." Ava simply nodded, her eyes steady and unyielding. The recruits exchanged glances, disbelief written across their faces. The one they had mocked, underestimated, and belittled in whispers was not only competent, but exceptional. She had turned their bravado into silence, their laughter into awe. The dynamic of the group shifted instantly. Where arrogance had ruled, a quiet respect now took its place. Even those who had not been part of the initial taunts felt the impact. The younger recruits, who had been giggling at Ava's perceived timidity, now approached her with tentative curiosity. Every glance they had cast her way earlier in the day was replaced with careful observation. Every whisper of mockery was replaced with murmurs of astonishment. Ava's presence had reshaped the energy of the group. After a brief pause, Chief Ramirez addressed the group again. "Let that moment sink in," he said firmly. "Judging someone by appearances, by silence, by anything other than their actions, is a mistake. Ava Collins has earned her respect not by words, not by boasting, but through action, skill, and discipline." His eyes scanned the recruits, lingering on Jake. "And some lessons," he added, "are learned the hard way." Ava remained quiet, allowing the lesson to resonate. She understood that her role was not to impress, but to teach through demonstration, through example, and through the subtle power of restraint. The young recruits, previously consumed by bravado, began to understand that confidence alone was no substitute for skill and preparation. The next drill required the recruits to pair up and navigate a complex tactical scenario. The others approached Ava cautiously, hesitant to provoke her again. Jake, still stammering from the earlier humiliation, approached her with a mixture of nervousness and awe. Partner?" he asked, unsure if he dared challenge her again. Ava nodded politely. "Let's go," she said calmly, her voice steady and reassuring. As they moved through the scenario, Ava's guidance became evident. She anticipated obstacles, corrected mistakes subtly, and offered advice without condescension. Her movements were precise, her reactions instantaneous. Even the most confident recruits had difficulty keeping pace with her, let alone learning from her. The group began to notice the way she observed every detail, how she adapted to every challenge, and how effortlessly she maintained control under pressure. By the end of the drill, the recruits were physically exhausted, mentally humbled, and profoundly changed. The mockery of the morning felt distant, almost absurd in retrospect. Ava's skill had shattered their assumptions. Her calm demeanor had dismantled their arrogance, and her presence had redefined what leadership and excellence looked like. In the quiet moments after the drill, the recruits gathered in small clusters, whispering among themselves. She's Navy elite? One muttered. There's no way, another said, shaking his head in disbelief. Jake, now silent and contemplative, stared at the ground. His bravado had been replaced with a tentative respect he didn't yet know how to express. Chief Ramirez, observing the transformation, allowed a faint smile. He had seen many recruits, many brash young men and women full of ego, but few had demonstrated the quiet, unyielding authority that Ava exuded. Today, he said, addressing the group, wasn't about drills or obstacle courses. It was about understanding respect, skill, and discipline. Remember it. Ava quietly stepped aside, her role complete for now. The recruits, still processing the events of the afternoon, watched her with a mixture of curiosity and newfound respect. For the first time, they realized that being underestimated was a dangerous mistake. Someone who appeared quiet, polite, and unassuming could possess a depth of skill and experience that far surpassed their own assumptions. The sun began its slow descent, casting long shadows across the base. The recruits, once arrogant and mocking, now carried themselves with caution and introspection. They had witnessed something extraordinary, and the lesson would not soon be forgotten. Ava Collins, silent and composed, had proven that true power and expertise need no announcement. They only require action. And as the recruits prepared for the next phase of their day, one truth resonated in their minds: the quiet new recruit they had mocked in whispers was not just competent, she was Navy elite. And underestimating her had been the first mistake of the day. The air on Norfolk Naval Base seemed to have shifted. Where laughter and mockery had dominated the morning, a heavy, almost reverent silence now filled the training grounds. The recruits, previously boisterous and confident, moved slower, their heads lowered, eyes darting to Ava Collins with a mix of disbelief and awe. They had just witnessed something they had never expected, and the memory of her flawless execution against Jake Reynolds still burned in their minds. Even Jake, usually the loudest voice in the group, remained quiet. He stood with arms crossed, his jaw tight, replaying the event in his mind. For the first time, he felt the weight of misjudgment. The cocky smirk that had defined his morning had vanished, replaced by something he wasn't accustomed to: humility. Around him, the other recruits whispered, shaking their heads in stunned silence. How did she do that? One muttered. She moved like she was untouchable, another whispered, eyes wide. Chief Ramirez stepped forward, his boots crunching on the gravel. His gaze swept across the group, lingering on each recruit, reading their expressions with a practiced eye. Silence, recruits, he commanded, his voice carrying authority. Do you understand what just happened? His words were calm, measured, yet they carried the weight of experience and expectation. The recruits nodded slowly, unsure how to respond, their previous bravado stripped away. Ramirez continued, his tone firm but instructive. Ava Collins has demonstrated what true skill, discipline, and experience look like. Take a moment to reflect, not just on her abilities, but on your own assumptions. Ava remained calm, standing slightly apart from the group, her posture relaxed yet commanding. She observed the recruits quietly, understanding the internal struggle each of them faced. Their surprise and awe were understandable, but she knew that real growth would only come if they internalized the lesson rather than simply being impressed by her skill. To the untrained eye, she had appeared modest, even unassuming, but her actions had spoken louder than any boast. Now, the question was whether the recruits would absorb the lesson. The silence lingered as the recruits replayed the day's events in their minds. The obstacle course, the tactical drills, Jake's failed attempt to dominate her, all of it formed a stark contrast to Ava's calm efficiency and flawless execution. Every mistake they had made, every moment of arrogance, seemed glaring in comparison. Some lowered their heads, unable to meet her gaze. Others studied her with a mixture of curiosity and cautious respect, recognizing that there was more to her than they had assumed. Danielle Moore, a recruit who had observed Ava quietly from the beginning, finally broke the silence. She didn't even seem to try, she said softly, almost to herself. Every movement. It's like she knew exactly what to do before it happened. A murmur of agreement passed through the group. The realization was sinking in. This was not luck, not coincidence. Ava's abilities were the result of years of intense training, discipline, and experience that far surpassed their own. Jake's voice broke through, hesitant and subdued. I underestimated her, he admitted, the words foreign on his tongue. His friends nodded, some sheepishly, some in disbelief. They had mocked her, expected to dominate her, and in 30 seconds, their assumptions had been shattered. The impact of humility weighed heavily on the group, and for the first time, they recognized that confidence without skill was meaningless. Chief Ramirez nodded approvingly at Jake's admission, then addressed the group once more. What you just witnessed wasn't just a demonstration of skill, he explained. It was a lesson in respect, discipline, and awareness. Ava Collins isn't here to intimidate you, nor to show off. She's here to teach you what it means to be prepared, to stay calm under pressure, and to understand that strength is earned, not assumed. Do you understand? The recruits nodded, some more convincingly than others, but all were deeply affected. The lesson had landed. Ava finally spoke, her voice calm, even gentle. I wasn't trying to embarrass anyone, she said. I didn't come here to prove anything. I'm here to help you learn, to prepare you for challenges you'll face in training and beyond. The mistake you made was not in underestimating me. It was in assuming anything about someone based on what you see. Her words, simple yet powerful, carried through the group, resonating far beyond the immediate moment. The recruits absorbed her message in their own ways. Some sat in silence, replaying her words and movements, understanding that true leadership and skill required patience, observation, and humility. Others began to see her not as a rival or threat, but as a teacher, someone whose calm authority could guide them toward improvement. The earlier tension, once charged with mockery, was now tempered with a newfound sense of possibility. Even the physical environment seemed to reflect the shift. The harsh sunlight no longer felt oppressive. The metallic clang of boots and equipment now sounded like the rhythm of preparation, not chaos. The base itself, often a symbol of discipline and challenge, became a backdrop for their first real lesson in respect, skill, and the subtleties of human observation. Ava moved among them quietly, checking posture, giving subtle nods of approval, and offering corrections without a single raised voice. Her calm authority spoke volumes. By mid-afternoon, the recruits had begun to interact differently. Conversations were quieter, more thoughtful, less about who could boast the loudest, and more about who could learn the most. Jake approached Ava tentatively, a newfound respect evident in his expression. I owe you an apology, he said. I judged you before I knew anything. Ava offered a small, understanding smile. It's part of learning, she replied simply. The important thing is that you're willing to reflect and improve. Chief Ramirez observed the transformation with satisfaction. Ava's approach had achieved what no lecture or reprimand could have done. She had shown, rather than told, the value of discipline, focus, and experience. The recruits had witnessed firsthand that arrogance could crumble in an instant, and that true strength demanded respect, observation, and patience. The silence after the storm was not empty. It was filled with thought, reflection, and the beginnings of growth. As the afternoon continued, the recruits returned to drills, this time with a different mindset. Movements were more precise, attention sharper, and cooperation stronger. Subtle glances at Ava showed that her influence had already begun to guide their actions. Where once they had sought to impress one another, they now sought to improve themselves, aware that skill and preparation mattered more than bravado. Ava watched, satisfied, her presence quiet but unmistakable, a catalyst for change. By the end of the day, the recruits had learned more than just the drills and obstacles. They had learned the value of humility, the danger of assumptions, and the power of experience. Ava Collins, once the mocked new recruit, had transformed the entire group with a combination of skill, patience, and quiet authority. Even the most skeptical among them could no longer doubt her expertise, or the lesson she had imparted through action rather than words. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the training grounds, a sense of calm settled over the group. The storm of mockery had passed, leaving in its wake something far more enduring: respect, reflection, and a recognition that leadership and skill were earned, not assumed. Ava's influence was subtle yet profound, and even in silence, her presence spoke volumes. The recruits, changed by the events of the day, knew that their training had truly begun, not just in physical ability, but in character, discipline, and awareness. Ava had proven that power and skill could be hidden behind quiet composure, and that the lessons learned from observation and action were far more potent than any boast or joke. For the first time, the mockery was gone. The silence after the storm was filled with thought, respect, and the quiet anticipation of growth, a growth that Ava Collins had ignited, without raising her voice, without boasting, simply through the undeniable force of her skill and example. The recruits gathered in the shaded mess area of Norfolk Naval Base, still processing the events of the morning and afternoon. The atmosphere had shifted from mockery to cautious curiosity. Ava Collins, now sitting slightly apart from the group, quietly ate her meal, her composure unwavering. Despite the exhaustion visible on the recruits' faces, a buzz of whispered conversation circled the group. They were no longer laughing at her. They were trying to understand her, to grasp how someone could possess such skill and control so effortlessly. Danielle Moore, a recruit who had been observing Ava throughout the day, finally gathered the courage to approach her. She sat down beside her quietly. "Ava, can I ask you something?" she said hesitantly, her eyes wide with curiosity. Ava nodded, offering a small, reassuring smile. "Of course," she replied calmly, her tone gentle but deliberate. Danielle hesitated for a moment, then asked the question that had been on everyone's mind. How are you so good at everything? I mean, it's like you've done this your whole life." Ava's expression softened, but a shadow passed across her eyes, hinting at memories she rarely shared. "I have," she began, her voice steady, but not in a way you would immediately understand. The recruits leaned closer, the air thick with anticipation. Ava took a slow breath and began to share the story that had shaped her into the woman standing before them. A story of discipline, sacrifice, and courage. She told them about her years in the Navy Elite Tactical Training Unit, where she had trained with special operations teams. Every day had been a test of endurance, skill, and mental fortitude. They had trained in extreme conditions, freezing nights in mountainous terrain, scorching heat in deserts, and simulated combat scenarios that pushed the limits of human capability. Ava spoke of drills that demanded precision under pressure, of moments when a single mistake could have devastating consequences. The recruits listened, captivated by the depth of her experience. Every movement, every decision, every action had to be perfect, she explained. There was no room for error. You learned to anticipate, to remain calm, and to act decisively. It wasn't just physical training, it was mental, emotional, and moral. You were constantly tested in every possible way, not just for yourself, but for the people relying on you. Her eyes reflected the intensity of those years, the memories of missions executed with precision, and the lessons learned from life and death scenarios. Ava's voice grew quieter as she spoke of the comrades she had lost in classified operations, men and women who had trusted her with their lives. We lost some of the best people I've ever known, she admitted, her gaze distant for a moment. You carry those losses with you. They teach you respect for life, for skill, and for discipline. You never forget what it means to be responsible for someone else's life. The recruits absorbed her words, realizing that the calm, precise movements they had seen earlier were born from experience, responsibility, and survival. Danielle, moved by the story, asked, "Is that why you're so calm? So in control? Because you've been through things none of us could even imagine?" Ava nodded. "Exactly," she replied. "Experience teaches you to stay composed, to observe, and to act decisively when it matters most. That calmness isn't weakness, it's preparation, control, and focus. It's the difference between success and failure, life and death." The other recruits, overhearing the conversation, began to shift closer, drawn to Ava's story. Even Jake, still humbled from their earlier encounter, listened quietly, his pride replaced by curiosity and admiration. He had assumed that confidence alone was enough, but Ava's story made it clear that true strength required more than bravado. It required training, discipline, and a deep understanding of responsibility. Ava continued, sharing the philosophy that guided her during her years in the Navy elite. "In the field, you learn quickly that ego is your enemy," she said. "Confidence is necessary, but arrogance is dangerous. You must rely on skill, preparation, and the trust you have in your team. Every action has consequences, and every decision matters." She looked around at the recruits, her gaze steady and unwavering. "That is the lesson I hope you take from today. Respect your training, respect your team, and never underestimate anyone." The recruits nodded slowly, many of them internalizing the lesson for the first time. Danielle spoke again, voice soft but firm. "I think I understand now. You weren't just proving how strong or skilled you are. You were teaching us how to think, how to respect others, and how to control ourselves." Ava smiled faintly. "Exactly. Strength without control is meaningless. Skill without humility is wasted. And leadership isn't about dominance, it's about guiding others to be their best." The group began to reflect on their earlier behavior. Mockery and arrogance had dominated their interactions that morning, but Ava's story and calm authority had forced them to confront their own assumptions. They realized that respect was earned, not demanded, and that humility often accompanied true strength. The lessons of the day extended far beyond drills and obstacle courses. They were lessons in character, discipline, and perspective. Jake, now visibly humbled, approached Ava once more. I didn't understand before," he admitted, his voice quieter than usual. "I judged you without knowing anything about you. I see now that I was wrong." Ava offered him a reassuring nod. "The important thing is that you're willing to reflect and improve. That's what matters in training and in life. Everyone starts somewhere, and growth comes from awareness and effort, not arrogance." As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the base, the recruits began to share their thoughts with one another, discussing the drills, the obstacles, and Ava's story. They compared their own assumptions with what they had witnessed, slowly internalizing the lessons of discipline, observation, and humility. Ava's presence had transformed the atmosphere. Where once there had been noise, arrogance, and distraction, there was now focus, curiosity, and respect. Chief Ramirez observed quietly from a distance, satisfied with the transformation. Ava had achieved something remarkable, not through lectures or intimidation, but through skill, experience, and quiet authority. The recruits had not only witnessed excellence, they had understood it, felt it, and were beginning to emulate it. The foundation of a team, he realized, had been laid. As the evening approached, Ava concluded her story. "I didn't come here to show off or intimidate. I came to teach you how to be ready, how to act with discipline, and how to respect the skill and experience of others. Remember that what you see is only a fraction of what someone is capable of. Learn from it and let it guide you." She stood, her calm presence commanding attention without a word. The recruits, inspired and introspective, understood the magnitude of her lesson. Ava Collins, once mocked as the timid new recruit, had revealed the truth of her strength. It was not in boasting. It was not in arrogance. It was in discipline, experience, and the humility to know when to act. The story behind her skill had become a lesson far more profound than any drill, one that would resonate with the group long after the day ended. For the recruits of Norfolk Naval Base, the morning of mockery had transformed into an afternoon of revelation. They had learned that greatness often hides beneath calm exteriors, and that the quietest people often carry the greatest strength. Ava's story was more than an explanation. It was a living demonstration of courage, skill, and the principles that would guide them in the days to come. The next morning, Norfolk Naval Base stirred with a renewed energy. The recruits, still buzzing from Ava Collins' revelation the previous day, approached the training grounds with a mixture of anticipation and newfound respect. Gone was the arrogance that had dominated the morning drills. In its place was a quiet determination. Conversations were subdued, focused, and thoughtful. Every recruit carried themselves differently, now shoulders straighter, movements deliberate, eyes sharper. Ava's influence was already beginning to ripple through the group, subtly shaping behavior, even before any formal instruction began. Chief Ramirez's whistle cut through the morning air, signaling the start of a new series of drills. "Recruits, today we'll test endurance, teamwork, and adaptability. Partner up and move to the obstacle course," he commanded. The recruits scrambled into pairs, hesitating for a moment as they considered whom to partner with. Ava's presence dominated the group's attention, and many instinctively gravitated toward her, not out of fear, but because they knew that learning from her could make the difference between success and failure. Jake, now humbled but eager to improve, approached Ava with a mix of nervousness and respect. "Can I partner with you?" he asked quietly. Ava nodded without a word. "Follow my lead, stay alert, and observe. That's the best way to learn," she said calmly. Jake swallowed, realizing that this wasn't about ego anymore. It was about growth. The first drill of the day was a grueling endurance exercise, designed to test both physical stamina and mental focus. Recruits had to carry weighted packs across uneven terrain, traverse climbing walls, and navigate rope courses while maintaining perfect form. Fatigue set in quickly, and mistakes began to emerge. Ava moved with controlled precision, helping Jake anticipate obstacles before he even saw them, offering subtle guidance that kept him steady. The difference between her experience and the recruit's inexperience became increasingly evident. As the drill progressed, Ava's teaching extended beyond physical skills. She instructed quietly but effectively, emphasizing observation and strategy. "Notice how the ground shifts under each step," she said. "Plan your movement before you act. Efficiency is better than force. Watch your partner coordinate." Her words were brief, yet they carried the weight of years of elite training. Jake, following her instructions, realized how much he had relied on brute strength and ego in the past, and how much more effective careful observation and teamwork could be. The other recruits began to notice the change. Those who had once mocked Ava observed her guidance and started mimicking her calm, deliberate approach. They coordinated better, adjusted their pace, and began to anticipate one another's movements. For the first time, the group functioned as a cohesive unit rather than a collection of individuals chasing personal glory. Ava's quiet leadership had transformed them, without any overt display of dominance or force. A sudden challenge arose midway through the obstacle course. A team had to carry a stretcher with a simulated injured recruit across a precarious suspension bridge. Several groups faltered immediately, arguing, losing balance, and nearly dropping their partner. Ava approached Jake's team, assessing their approach with a keen eye. "Balance the weight evenly," she instructed calmly. "Communicate with each other. Move as one." Under her guidance, Jake and his team crossed the bridge smoothly, coordinating with precision and care. The difference between panic and poise was clear to everyone. Chief Ramirez watched intently, noting the remarkable change in group dynamics. Where recruits had been chaotic and undisciplined just 2 days prior, they now moved with focus, cooperation, and measured confidence. Ava had not forced respect. She had earned it through action, demonstration, and quiet authority. The lesson was profound. Leadership was not about intimidation, but about guiding others to realize their potential. By the afternoon, the drills intensified. Recruits faced a simulated extraction mission, requiring problem-solving under pressure, stealth, and endurance. Ava allowed the team to make decisions, only intervening in critical moments to correct mistakes or prevent accidents. The recruits began to anticipate each other's actions, coordinate their movements, and act with a newfound awareness. Mistakes were minimized, and progress was steady. Each successful maneuver bolstered their confidence, but it was tempered by the understanding that discipline and focus remained essential. Jake, reflecting on the past 2 days, finally understood what Ava had been teaching from the beginning. "It's not just about strength or speed," he whispered to Danielle. "It's about observation, patience, and knowing when to act. She's teaching us how to think, not just how to do." Danielle nodded, her eyes on Ava as she adjusted a recruit's posture. "Exactly. And she's showing us that teamwork and respect are just as important as skill." The turning point became undeniable when the final task of the day arrived, a high-intensity team relay, combining elements of endurance, obstacle navigation, and tactical decision-making. Each team moved cautiously, aware that mistakes could cost them time and coordination. Ava's guidance had instilled a rhythm in Jake's team. They communicated efficiently, adjusted quickly, and completed the course faster than any other group. The transformation was complete. The recruits who had mocked her were now striving to emulate her calm efficiency and strategic thinking. By the end of the day, fatigue and sweat had left every recruit physically drained, yet their morale was higher than ever. They had learned lessons that extended beyond physical drills, lessons of observation, coordination, humility, and leadership. Ava's presence had fundamentally reshaped the group dynamic. Where there had once been arrogance, there was now respect. Where there had been confusion, there was now focus. And where there had been mockery, there was now cooperation. Chief Ramirez gathered the recruits for a final briefing, his expression one of satisfaction. "You faced your first real test as a team," he said. "Today demonstrated what can happen when experience, discipline, and cooperation are applied effectively. Pay attention to your peers, respect the skills of others, and always remember that leadership is shown through action, not words." His eyes lingered on Ava, acknowledging her role in shaping the team's transformation. Ava, standing quietly to the side, allowed the moment to sink in. The recruits had absorbed not just her actions, but the philosophy behind them: discipline, patience, and humility. They now understood that the true measure of a person's strength was revealed in their actions under pressure, and that leadership was a responsibility, not a privilege. As the sun began its descent, casting long shadows over the base, the recruits reflected on the day's events. They had faced challenges they had once thought insurmountable, guided by someone they had initially underestimated. Ava's calm authority had not only led them to success, but had taught them how to approach challenges in the future, with observation, preparation, and mutual respect. For the first time, Norfolk Naval Base felt different to the recruits. The energy that had been chaotic and overconfident had transformed into focus and purpose. They had learned that skill alone was insufficient. Character, awareness, and teamwork were equally vital. Ava Collins, once dismissed as the quiet new recruit, had catalyzed this transformation, her presence leaving an indelible mark on the group. By evening, the recruits returned to the barracks, exhausted but changed. Jake, walking beside Danielle, glanced back at Ava. "I get it now," he said quietly. "It's not just about winning or showing off. It's about how you handle yourself, how you lead, and how you work with others." Danielle smiled, nodding in agreement. "And it starts with respect for the mission, for your team, and for people like Ava who show you what's possible." Ava remained a quiet observer, understanding that her work with the recruits was ongoing. The day had been a turning point, but the lessons were only just beginning to take root. The recruits had glimpsed the standards of excellence, discipline, and calm authority she embodied, and the transformation they had experienced would continue to shape their actions in the days and weeks to come. The sun finally set over Norfolk Naval Base, bathing the training grounds in golden light. The storm of arrogance and mockery had passed. In its place, a team had begun to emerge disciplined, focused, and guided by the quiet authority of Ava Collins, the Navy elite recruit who had shown them the power of skill, patience, and respect. The morning sun rose over Norfolk Naval Base, casting sharp shadows across the training grounds. Today was different. A quiet tension lingered in the air, heavier than the usual anticipation of drills. The recruits had spent days adjusting to Ava Collins' guidance, absorbing lessons in discipline, observation, teamwork, and humility. Now, they were about to face the ultimate challenge, the final test of endurance, skill, and cohesion, the one exercise that would reveal whether they had truly internalized everything Ava had taught them. Chief Ramirez's whistle pierced the crisp morning air, drawing the recruits' attention. "Today," he announced, voice firm and commanding, "you will face the advanced tactical simulation. Success will require strategy, coordination, and discipline. Failure will expose weakness, arrogance, and unpreparedness. This is your final test. Choose wisely, act deliberately, and remember the lessons you've learned." The recruits exchanged tense glances. Even Jake, whose ego had been humbled over the past days, felt a knot of anxiety in his stomach. Ava stepped forward, her calm presence commanding attention without any effort. "Remember what we've practiced," she said, voice steady and reassuring. "Observe, communicate, and act as a team. Don't focus on ego. Focus on the mission." Her eyes scanned the group, landing briefly on each recruit, silently reinforcing the idea that every action would matter today. The simulation began. Recruits were divided into teams and faced a series of obstacles designed to test every skill they had been taught: navigating complex terrain, carrying simulated injured comrades, identifying threats, and responding to rapidly changing scenarios. The stakes were high, and the pressure immediate. Every decision, every hesitation, could affect the outcome. Jake's team moved cautiously, consciously applying Ava's lessons. He noticed subtle cues: The weight distribution in carrying a stretcher, the timing of teammate movements over unstable terrain, the importance of silent communication. Each adjustment improved efficiency and coordination. Where panic had once overtaken him, he now moved with deliberate precision. Ava guided silently, intervening only when necessary, allowing the recruits to think, act, and learn from their choices. Meanwhile, Ava monitored the other teams, observing strengths and weaknesses. Some recruits still struggled, falling back into old habits of rushing, overexerting, or ignoring teamwork. But under her careful oversight, even these individuals began to adjust, slowly learning to synchronize with their teammates and anticipate challenges. The transformation was gradual, but undeniable. Ava's presence acted as both the shield and the compass, directing them without dominating their decisions. The first major obstacle appeared, a simulated collapse zone, where recruits had to navigate rubble and unstable structures while carrying equipment and providing assistance to teammates. Panic flared briefly in some groups, but Jake's team moved with coordinated efficiency. They communicated silently, balanced weight carefully, and navigated the treacherous terrain without incident. Ava's earlier lessons echoed in their actions. Observation, preparation, and trust in one another guided their decisions. Midway through the simulation, a surprise challenge emerged. Chief Ramirez announced, "You've encountered hostile units, neutralize threats, and extract your team safely." The recruits faced a complex tactical scenario. Ambush points, decoys, and simulated dangers requiring split-second decision-making. Chaos threatened, but Ava's mentorship was evident in Jake's team. Each movement was calculated, each choice deliberate. They communicated fluidly, responding to threats without panic. Ava stepped forward briefly, providing critical insight. Observe the patterns, anticipate their movements, and protect your weakest member first. Efficiency and teamwork matter more than speed. Her calm, measured advice resonated, allowing Jake and his team to adapt instantly. Where other teams faltered under pressure, Jake's team maintained composure, systematically neutralizing threats and completing the objectives. The recruits began to understand that true leadership was measured not by dominance, but by foresight, strategy, and coordination. The simulation's final stage demanded peak endurance and mental focus. A treacherous river crossing, followed by a high wall climb, all while carrying a simulated casualty. Fatigue weighed heavily on the recruits. Sweat and mud coated their uniforms. Muscles burned. Minds wavered. Yet Jake's team, guided by the principles Ava had instilled, continued with unwavering focus. They observed, communicated, and adjusted with precision. The lessons of the past days, humility, observation, discipline, and teamwork, were now fully realized. Ava's influence was evident in every calculated move, every quiet adjustment, and every coordinated action. Jake, previously impulsive and arrogant, now led with careful guidance and awareness, supporting his teammates without dominating or boasting. Danielle adjusted her stride to balance the weight of the stretcher perfectly, while others anticipated each challenge before it arrived. Every recruit had internalized Ava's teachings, turning chaos into coordination and panic into calm efficiency. As they approached the final wall climb, exhaustion threatened to overwhelm them. Ava offered a brief, steadying reminder. Focus. Trust your training. Move as one. Her words were not commands, but guidance, a subtle reinforcement of discipline and composure. Jake's team scaled the wall with coordinated effort, helping one another over the final obstacle. Their synchronization, efficiency, and focus were a testament to the transformation Ava had guided. The simulation concluded. Chief Ramirez blew his whistle, signaling the end. Silence fell across the grounds, punctuated only by the heavy breathing and fatigue of the recruits. For the first time, the results were not about individual performance, but about team cohesion. strategic thinking, and resilience under pressure. Jake's team had completed the course flawlessly, demonstrating the principles Ava had taught in action. Other teams, while not perfect, had also shown marked improvement. Chief Ramirez addressed the recruits, his voice steady and authoritative. Today, you have proven that growth comes from discipline, observation, and teamwork. You have internalized the lessons of respect, humility, and preparedness. Leadership is not about ego or domination. It is earned through action, strategy, and support of your team. Recognize the effort of your peers and the guidance of those who lead with skill. Ava stepped forward for the first time since the simulation began, her calm presence commanding attention without a word. She nodded approvingly at the recruits, acknowledging their effort and growth. You faced challenges that required more than strength or speed, she said. You've learned to observe, coordinate, and act as one. Remember these lessons, they will guide you in every challenge to come, on the base and beyond. Jake, humbled and inspired, approached her. Thank you, he said quietly, voice filled with sincerity. I didn't understand at first, but now I do. You've taught us so much more than drills or obstacles. Ava offered a small, reassuring smile. The important thing is that you learned, and that you apply it. Skill alone is nothing without discipline and respect. The recruits, still catching their breath, absorbed the weight of the day's events. Ava's mentorship had transformed them from a chaotic, arrogant group into a cohesive, disciplined team, capable of facing challenges with calm, strategic action. The lessons of observation, patience, humility, and teamwork were no longer abstract. They were lived and demonstrated in every movement, decision, and interaction. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, bathing the base in golden light, a sense of accomplishment and understanding filled the air. The final test had not only evaluated their skill, but had also cemented the lessons Ava had imparted over the past days. The recruits, once mocking and dismissive, now carried themselves with quiet confidence, mutual respect, and an awareness of the standards they had been shown. Ava Collins, the quiet Navy elite recruit, once underestimated, had not only revealed her own skill, but had guided the transformation of an entire team. Through her calm authority, experience, and mentorship, she had turned arrogance into humility, chaos into coordination, and doubt into confidence. The final test was not just a simulation. It was the proof that true leadership, discipline, and respect had taken root in the hearts and minds of the recruits. And as the shadows lengthened over Norfolk Naval Base, one truth was undeniable. The group would never forget the lessons of Ava Collins, the Navy elite who had shown them what it meant to lead, to act with skill, and to respect the strength of others. The sun was setting over Norfolk Naval Base, casting a warm, golden glow across the training grounds. The day's final drills were complete, and the recruits gathered in the mess area, their uniforms dirty, sweat-streaked, and bodies exhausted, but their minds were alert and alive. What had begun as a routine week of training had transformed into something far greater. They had faced challenges, endured humiliation, absorbed lessons, and grown into a team capable of tackling adversity with confidence and coordination. And through it all, one figure had been the catalyst: Ava Collins. Ava sat quietly at the edge of the group, observing. She didn't need applause or acknowledgement. Her impact had already been made. The recruits now approached her not with mockery or skepticism, but with curiosity, respect, and admiration. Even Jake, once brash and overconfident, approached her hesitantly, finally understanding the lessons she had instilled. "Ava, thank you," he said softly. "For everything, we didn't realize how much we were missing before." Ava offered a small, measured smile. "The lessons were here all along," she said. "I simply helped you see them. Skill without discipline, confidence without respect, and action without thought achieve nothing. What you've accomplished isn't just because of me, it's because you chose to learn and apply what you saw. Her words carried weight far beyond the moment. A quiet affirmation of growth and responsibility. The recruits reflected on their journey over the past days. They remembered the early morning laughter, Ava's quiet demeanor, their whispered mockery, and Jake's arrogant bravado. It felt like a lifetime ago. The events of that day, the sudden revelation of Ava's Navy elite skills, had shocked them, humbled them, and set them on a path toward transformation. Every drill, every obstacle, every tactical challenge had become a lesson not just in skill, but in character. Danielle, sitting beside Jake, spoke up, her voice tinged with awe. "I think I finally understand. It wasn't just about being strong or fast. It was about thinking ahead, working with your team, and knowing when to act. That's what makes a leader." Ava nodded approvingly. Exactly. Leadership isn't about showing off. It's about responsibility, discipline, and guiding others toward success. That's the legacy you carry forward, not mine, but yours. Chief Ramirez stepped forward, his presence commanding attention. He had been observing the recruit's transformation closely, and a rare smile touched his face. "Recruits," he said, voice firm yet filled with approval. "What you've demonstrated over the past days is remarkable. You've faced adversity, learned humility, and transformed into a team capable of operating with skill and discipline. Today proves that guidance, experience, and calm authority can unlock potential you didn't realize you had." A murmur of agreement rippled through the group. The recruits now understood that the mockery of the past was a distant memory. Ava's influence had reshaped not only their abilities, but their perspectives. Respect, patience, and observation were no longer abstract ideas, they were lived experiences, demonstrated in every movement, every decision, and every collaborative effort. Jake, still quiet, finally spoke aloud, addressing the group and Ava. "We all judged her before we knew anything," he admitted, his voice steady. "But what she's shown us, it's more than skill. It's discipline, focus, and leadership. I think we've all learned something we'll never forget." His teammates nodded, some visibly emotional, acknowledging the depth of the lesson. Ava's gaze swept across the recruits, and for the first time, she allowed herself a faint, proud smile. "That's the point," she said. "Learning doesn't end here. It continues in every challenge you face, every obstacle you encounter, and every teammate you support. You have the potential to achieve great things, but only if you apply what you've learned, consistently and with integrity." The recruits absorbed her words in silence, realizing that the legacy of the new recruit extended far beyond her Navy elite skills. It was the example she had set, the demonstration of humility, discipline, and authority without arrogance that would continue to guide them long after the drills were over. Ava had not sought recognition. She had only shown through action what it meant to be a true professional, a true leader, and a true team player. As evening fell, the recruits began to discuss their future drills with a sense of purpose. They spoke in measured tones, planning strategies, coordinating movements, and reflecting on lessons learned. Ava's presence was still felt, though she no longer needed to give direct instructions. Her influence had been internalized, her principles absorbed into the group's very dynamic. The energy of the team had shifted completely, confidence tempered with humility, action tempered with thought, and competition replaced with collaboration. Chief Ramirez, observing the scene, nodded with quiet satisfaction. Ava had not just trained the recruits. She had transformed them. She had taken a group of individuals brimming with arrogance and doubt and forged them into a cohesive unit, capable of achieving more than they thought possible. The legacy of her guidance would not fade with the day. It would persist in every interaction, every decision, and every challenge they faced in the future. As the final rays of sunlight illuminated the base, Ava rose, preparing to leave the recruits for the evening. She had completed her part of the journey, but the seeds she had planted were now firmly rooted. The team would carry the lessons forward, not because they were told to, but because they had seen and experienced their value. Every step, every movement, and every choice would be guided by the principles she had imparted. Before departing, Ava turned to the group one last time. "Remember," she said softly, but with unmistakable authority, "strength is measured by discipline, skill by application, and leadership by the respect you earn. Never forget what you've learned here, not just about drills, not just about tactics, but about yourself and your team." The recruits watched her leave, a quiet reverence settling over the group. For them, Ava Collins would forever be more than the quiet new recruit. She was a symbol of discipline, skill, humility, and leadership, a living example of what it meant to rise above arrogance, to learn through action, and to inspire others by simply being exceptional. As night fell over Norfolk Naval Base, the recruits returned to their quarters, exhausted but transformed. The laughter and chatter that had dominated their first days had been replaced by thoughtful reflection, discussion, and an eagerness to improve. Ava's lessons had become the foundation of their growth. Her legacy was no longer just her reputation. It was the change she had inspired in each of them, a change that would endure long after the drills were over. And in the quiet of the evening, as the base settled into calm, one truth remained clear: the mockery of a new recruit had been replaced by respect for a Navy elite whose skill, discipline, and mentorship had forever altered the trajectory of a team. Ava Collins' legacy was not measured in victories or accolades, but in the lives she had touched, the lessons she had imparted, and the standard of excellence she had set. For the recruits of Norfolk Naval Base, the story of the new recruit would be told for years to come, a story of humility, skill, courage, and transformation. And every time they faced a challenge, they would remember the lessons of Ava Collins, the Navy elite who had shown them that true strength is revealed not in arrogance, but in discipline, respect, and quiet authority. The night sky settled over the base, calm and vast, echoing the silence of reflection and growth. Ava's figure disappeared into the shadows, but her impact remained luminous, a guiding force for the recruits, and a legacy that would endure long after her presence had faded from sight.